Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Arrhythmia Alliance and AF Association Shared Stories series. As you all know, Shared Stories provide so much support and comfort for patients who are newly diagnosed, looking to be diagnosed and suspecting they have AFib, or maybe just patients who've had AFib for years. Today, we will go through a series of questions that will provide additional education and support for patients who have AFib. Here with me today, I have a great patient by the name of Andrew. Hi, Andrew. How are you today?
Hi, Sharonika. Nice to be here.
Awesome. Nice to have you here with us today. So right now, we'll walk through a series of questions. We hope that these questions and the answers provided bring great comfort to each of you. Here we go. So our first question, Andrew, is when were you first diagnosed with AFib?
Yeah, so that happened to me in late February of this year. So basically, I'm 46 years old. I've always been super healthy. I had a bit of flu in February of this year. I didn't think anything of it, but I went out for a run as I normally do. And suddenly during my run, I got chest pains and my heart started beating really fast. And I'd never experienced that before. So I thought to begin with that I was having a heart attack, which was very scary. But I didn't go to hospital then. I kind of just went back home. I thought things might relax, but my heart still just kept on beating really fast. So eventually I went to hospital. And the interesting thing there is they diagnosed that I was in atrial fibrillation immediately, which was something I'd never heard of before. But the more interesting thing is, because they thought it could have been a heart attack, they also measured my blood for a hormone called troponin, which your heart releases when it's damaged. And my troponin levels were 400% above normal, which is pretty bad. So they didn't know if it was a heart attack or not, which was really scary because it could have been a heart attack because the troponin was so elevated. So to cut a very long story short, I had to be admitted into hospital as if it was a heart attack. I spent a night in the intensive care ward while I was being monitored. And then over the course of a week, when I went for a whole bunch of other tests, they worked out that actually it wasn't a heart attack, thank goodness. It was atrial fibrillation, but they think it had been brought on by a viral infection because I had the flu at the time. And they now think it could even have been coronavirus. But because in February they weren't doing tests, there's no way of knowing.
Right. Oh my gosh, your situation is so unique and interesting. Very interesting. I'm so sorry. It kind of took me by surprise. That's an interesting story. I think it's really important to place a strong emphasis. As you stated, you didn't know what atrial fibrillation was. We have to understand, like, atrial fibrillation tends to be in about 1 in 4 adults over the age of 65. However, AFib has been found in younger patients. So you being 46, healthy male, and then discovering that you have AFib and in this unique experience and kind of going through this kind of healthcare journey, and they're thinking that you actually had a heart attack. Luckily, it wasn't a heart attack and you came to a diagnosis, but how scary was that?
It's really scary. Yeah, really scary.
Oh my gosh. So our second question was, how has being diagnosed with AFib changed or either affected your life?
Yeah, well, look, to begin with, it was, like I said, very scary because I spent a week in hospital not knowing what was wrong. And then coming out of hospital, it was still very weird because atrial fibrillation isn't something that you know a lot about. And, the cardiologist didn't give me great information about it, to be honest. So I just knew I had this arrhythmia. I knew I was on medication for it. And I knew I had a scheduled cardioversion to try to put me back into sinus rhythm. But I knew very little else. So I think to begin with, at least, it was very disconcerting. You feel very kind of alone because you don't know of a lot of people who, I didn't know anyone who had this. And actually what I found incredibly helpful was websites like the British Heart Foundation and the Arrhythmia Alliance and the forums that I found there, because it was just really great to not feel kind of alone about this stuff.
Right. So a lot of patients, as you stated, I don't care what conditions you have, what we all notice, I don't care where you live, is that when we go in to see our physicians, there's this little short window that we have to kind of speak with them and
Mm.
ask our questions and everything. And sometimes it feels like this time is just crunching, and that the physicians don't have enough time to spend with us to educate us. And that's where,
Sure.
Arrhythmia Alliance and the AF Association, we come in to play and just make sure that our patients are educated as much as possible. The forums provide so much support. Just
Yeah, it
having,
was great. Really
yeah,
great.
having patients who you can actually speak with. So I always tell people, physicians are well educated on certain conditions. However, we learn so much from patients who actually have to live these conditions.
Yeah. No, it was brilliant. Really, really helpful.
I bet. So the third question is, what therapy option did you choose?
Yeah. So look, to begin with, they put me on beta blockers and anticoagulation. So the beta blockers to slow down the heart rate and the anticoagulation to prevent strokes. And I hated being on medication, to be honest with you. I found that the beta blockers, they made me feel tired, they made me feel dizzy. Because I was on the anticoagulation, I was always nervous in case I was cooking, if I'd cut myself
Yeah.
and just bleed a lot. So I wanted to get it sorted as quickly as possible. So I had a scheduled cardioversion. Like I said, I was diagnosed in February. I had my cardioversion in April. Unfortunately, like a lot of cardioversion patients, it didn't last. So I was in sinus rhythm for 2.5 weeks, and then literally I just woke up back in AFib. I wasn't doing exercise. I hadn't done anything. I literally just woke up one day and I was back in it. So then I then moved on to see a specialist, and I scheduled an ablation in July, on the 8th of July. So I went from diagnosis in February to a cardioversion in April to an ablation in July.
Gotcha. That's really interesting. And I love the fact that you're touching on all the different measures that you took as far as therapy, from medication, knowing that medication just wasn't a route for you. You didn't enjoy or like being on medication.
Yeah, I
And
didn't like it.
every medication has a side effect, you know, on to having a cardioversion. Several patients say, on average, their cardioversions, and everyone's different. I've spoken with a few patients over the past 2 days, which is really interesting for you to say about 2 weeks where your cardioversion has lasted. The few people I've spoken with was 10 and 12 days. So we're
Wow,
noticing,
very similar.
yeah, very similar. Um, so the fourth question that I have for you is, what lifestyle changes have you made following your diagnosis?
Yes, look, like I said, I was very healthy before my diagnosis. So I eat healthily, I exercise regularly. I mean, like I said, I found out about AFib when I was on a run. So I didn't make a lot of changes, but I did make two. So one of the changes that I made was I used to drink about 21 units of alcohol a week. In the UK, the recommended weekly dose for a man is 14. And I've actually lowered it down to 14 because everything that I've read suggests that, AFib and alcohol don't mix very well. So I've reduced that. And then the other change that I've made is I used to do a lot of high intensity training, so sprint exercises. I've found, so since my ablation, I've been in sinus rhythm almost constantly, which is great news. But I found that the 2 times I went back temporarily into AFib were after particularly intense bouts of exercise. So I'm now a little bit more cautious about how I exercise. I'm still doing exercise, but I'm not pushing myself as hard.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. We do hear a lot how patients have chosen to either lower their intake of alcohol or either just stop it altogether. One thing we do say is that, you have control over your life, so do whatever works for you. And every patient is completely different. I love the fact that you're still exercising. There's so many patients who have been diagnosed with AFib and they fear going back into their AFib episodes. So they kind of stop, they maneuver everything that they do within their lives. And it's where AFib is kind of taking control and not them as the patient. So I'm proud to hear that you're continuing on with working out and kind of trying to live your life as normal as possible through it all.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So the fifth question that I have for you today is, what are the challenges of living with AFib during a pandemic? And I know you're newly diagnosed and you've gone through version and
but that's fine. That's fine. I've got plenty of stories. So there's loads of challenges. So to be diagnosed during a pandemic, is just so scary anyway, right? Because I was literally diagnosed. I came out of hospital in the first week of March, and we went into lockdown in the UK, I think 2 or 3 weeks later. So, you know, all I knew was that there was this new killer virus. I felt really vulnerable because I'd just been diagnosed with something and I didn't really understand it. So that was really disorientating and scary. And then just things like, you know, getting medication was hard because immediately after the lockdown, everyone was panicking and ordering their medications online. So it was taking much longer than usual to get central medication. Before my ablation, I had to have a whole bunch of tests to make sure that my heart structure was okay for an ablation, because, you know, if you've got some issues with your heart structure, you can't have one. And before each of those tests, I had to have COVID tests to make sure that I wasn't going to transmit to the staff. Everything took longer than usual. It was really hard work, basically. It was a bad time to be diagnosed, I'd say.
I bet. That sounds like a lot to actually go through. And just as you stated, before every test and every study, you know,
it was hard.
You had to be tested. I'm pretty sure it had to be very scary, you know what I mean, being diagnosed and then this killer virus kind of sweeping the world comes about, and you're like, wait, I wasn't even fully educated on the condition I just was diagnosed
exactly
with.
Yeah. And everything took longer as well. I remember I was really lucky that I got to see a really good cardiologist very quickly who really understood atrial fibrillation. He was an expert in that area, but he couldn't treat me for ages because of coronavirus, because he was, you know, his time was being taken up like kind of saving people's lives, right? Because of the disease. So it was just, everything took longer than usual.
Right. Gotcha. Thank you for sharing that. The last and final question that I have for you is, what advice would you give to a newly diagnosed AFib patient?
Yeah, so this one's really easy. It's inform yourself, right? Because it's you know, there's that saying, information's power, and it's so true. When I first got diagnosed, I didn't know anything about it. It was so mysterious. It was so scary, and it's not like a heart attack where everyone kind of knows what a heart attack is. Like, atrial fibrillation is something that no one I spoke to really understood. So what I found really helpful was obviously speaking to doctors, because they're a great source of information. Going onto certain websites, like I said, the British Heart Foundation, you know, the Arrhythmia Alliance. I went to those. They were very, very helpful. And also I bought some books on the subject as well. There's some good books out there. There's one called, I've forgotten the name now. It's something like the erratic heart, or, you know, the something like that, the erratic heart, written by two doctors who are specialists in this area. You can get it on Amazon. And I just found, I found those things incredibly helpful, right? Because it's not hearsay, it's not rumor, it's good sources of information that just help you understand better what's going on with you.
Right. The main thing is what you said, you know, education is key. It's about educating yourself on these conditions. I want to say, you know, Arrhythmia Alliance and the AF Association, we provide as much resources from diagnosis all the way to mindfulness regarding atrial fibrillation, and all resources are free of charge. Every year, you know, we host the Patients Day, providing, you know, just one-on-one time where patients can come and see physicians. Now, of course, this year making it all virtual, but just making sure patients have that support from other patients who have gone through what they've gone through, and people who just experience what they are kind of experiencing in that moment. I want to say a huge thank you to you, Andrew, for your time today.
Pleasure.
The answers to these questions are going to provide so much support for patients, despite where they are on their journey. Your journey is very unique because it was new and it happened during COVID, which is great, because there's going to be so many other patients. I'm pretty sure there are tons of other patients just like you. So knowing that someone else has gone through what they've gone through. So a huge thank you to you. If anyone is ever interested in sharing their story, remember to visit our website and feel free to reach out to us. Thank you.
Thanks so much.